What?
I don't know if they reserve the vote yet.
I wouldn't expect them to yet. But this way, one can daven Shachris, one can do Musa, right? Thank you very much. One of them should be enough. Yeah. I once had an occasion somewhat similar. It was a second marriage, and each had a child, approximately like
Around the same time.
yeah. So they shared one bar mitzvah.
Right. We have two others, grandsons.
Yeah.
Great grandsons. Where's Heshy? We didn't have that.
I don't think he's back yet.
What? He lives here?
Yeah, he lives full time. No, except when he's in the summer, he has a place in Pennsylvania. Okay, gentlemen, we got a lot on the docket today. Some of us even have to get ready for Shabbos. Right? Well, let's put it this way. Because I'm pinch hitting as a gabbai also, I got other jobs to do. Okay?
Yeah.
My wife gave me a break last night from changing over to prepare the Gemara for this morning. Okay. All right. The light switch is on. Oh, I'm going to start the learning sponsors. Isaac and Evelyn Blachler in memory of his sister. Chaya Rachel Bas Isa, friends of Leonie Meiselman, Leah Saber Bas Chanuk Zundel, friends of Mel Skotsky, Moshe Zelig ben Mordechai, Martin Lippman and family, in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pinchas, friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi ben Ze'ev, friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel ben Yaakov, friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo ben Meir. A month of learning, Andrea and David Dolney, in memory of her mother, Edith Sinabat Shimshon, friends and students of Rabbi Shalom Kornblum, Harav Shalom ben Mordechai, Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her father, Yosef Eliezer ben Tzvi Hirsch, Mark Shant, in memory of his father, Mordechai ben Menachem Manis, Mark Linder, in memory of his nephew, Eretz Paul ben Sulis. A week of learning by Susan Fruchter Kramer and Shelley Kramer, in memory of her mother, Bela Bat Yeshaya. Ruth Kostman, in memory of her husband, Shmuel ben Yitzchak. And today we have a day of learning by Mel Grossman, in memory of his father, Menachem Manish ben Yehuda. The Shamas have an aliyah, crank Rafiel, Velti Yeshua Shem Latzliah, and the Chol B'nai Israel, good Gebenchtia. Okay. Amen. Okay. Amen. Okay. We got to the top. Sorry. Got to the top of Ted Zion Amud Aleph yesterday. Okay, right? Okay, so that's where we're going to start in a moment. Okay. The Ted Zion. Ted Zion Amud Aleph. Right? It should be 16A1 in our scroll. Right? Okay.
Isn't above 16?
No, Chaf is 20. Chaf is always 20. So Tet Zion.
Chaf is 20.
What?
Chaf is 6.
Yeah. So Tet. So today is Tet Zion.
Tet Zion.
Tet Zion.
I thought you said Tov.
Yeah, no. Tet Zion Amud Aleph 16A1. Okay. We still have a couple more weeks that we'll be working on Sota. All right. Okay. So the Gemara ended with the fact that because, as I tried to point out, because they're citing the pasuk that says from Karka Hamishkan, okay, that's why I made the point that it said when we learned the Mishnah that it said Karka Hamishkan and not Karka Beit Hamikdash. Okay, when we learned the Mishnah, and it said, and it cited the pasuk that it said Mikarka Hamishkan, from the land, from the ground or the earth of the floor of the Mishkan. That's why I pointed out that the Mishnah did not say Mi Beit Hamikdash. Okay, so that we would be clued in to this particular piece. Okay, and what happened? That's why we saw on the very bottom, okay, of the previous Amud, Isi ben Yehuda Omer, Lahavi Karka Shiloh Nov V'Givon Ubeit Olami. Okay, implying that, does that imply that we needed to have earth from all of those previous locations where the Mishkan had been? Okay, and by the way, if you ever get to Eretz Yisrael, or if you have opportunity to travel there, go to see the Shiloh. Go to see Shiloh, where the Mishkan was. Although you can't really tell per se on the ground, they have an outstanding tourist center there that gives you a whole depiction of the Mishkan and everything there, and it's well done, very well done. Okay, so, but it's not an easy. It's something that you usually have to go. Best advised to go as a group. Okay. All right. Anyway, all right. So that's so now, and Beit Olamim there refers to the Beis Hamikdash. We're on the top of Tet Zion Amud Aleph. Okay, 16A1 if you're using arts. Okay, so we're going to pick up there. We're going to see that the Gemara is going to go into a number of aspects. Okay, some of which are directly connected with our Mishnah. Some, however, expand that discussion. Okay. All right. Isi ben Menachem Omer. He says, you don't need to derive it from that pasuk and say it that way. Why? Umah betum'ah kala lo chilek hakatuv. Whereas in a lesser, I'm going to say tuma, the text, the Torah did not make a separate, statement to particularly include the Beis Hamikdash, even though it said Karka Hamishkan. Betum'at Eshet Ish Chamura Lo Kol Sheken. If you're going to say that there was a prohibition regarding these other places, for a lesser tuma, when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash, all the more so that there is a greater tuma, which is the sota. Okay. Im Kain says the Gemara, Ma Talmud Lomar B'Karka Hamishkan. If that's the case, what do we derive as the meaning of the phrase from the ground of the Mishkan? Shelo yavi mitoch kupato, that he should not bring from his own box of earth that he keeps at home, that is appropriate for him to use to cover any kind of tsoah or any kind of other kinds of things that need to be covered, etc., etc. Okay. Ibailaho.
So is this the husband or the Kohen?
No, this is the Kohen, right? Okay. So what happens? So Our Mishnah then said, what happens if there is no dirt under that stone that he lifted up, right? So, ein sham afar, if there's no earth there, mahu sheyitain efer, shall we say then that he should use ash? Okay, right? In other words, take it.
Plenty of ash oil.
Okay, take it, right? So apparently, aliba de Beit Shammai, according to the view of Beit Shammai, do we really even have to ask that question? Lo to Bailach. There's no need to raise that question and that issue. The Amre, why? Because Beit Shammai says, Lo matzinu efer shekarui afar. We find no place where ash is called earth. Okay, right? Ki tebailach.
So you would say no, sure.
Right. Ki tebailach. When do you have to ask this question? I'm going to say it. Aliba de Beit Hillel, according to the view of Beis Hillel. Why? The Amre, because they say matzinu efer shekarui afar, that we do find a place, in other words, a pasuk, where ash is called earth. My, at what point? Where is this? Afagav de ikre afar, even though it's called earth. Hacha bekarka hamishkan kati. But here, specifically in regards to the Sota situation, we're clearly told from the pasuk, it's got to be earth from the quotes Mishkan, from the holy facility. I'm going to use it that way for the moment. Okay, that's what's written. O Dilma, or perhaps Hai Bekarka Hamishkan, or perhaps when we talk about earth from the physical facility, Kila de Isi ben Yehuda, Kila de Isi ben Menachem Hudaate. Maybe what we're talking about here is what they cited earlier, that it had to actually be earth from those locations where the Mishkan had been located. Okay?
Does that rule out the base of Mikdash?
No, it includes the Beis Hamikdash because on the top of the Amud it said Beit HaOlamim, which refers to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay? Tashma, listen to the following brighton. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yishmael, said by Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yishmael.
Maybe alone sometimes maybe a sanitary, no?
It could be, but that isn't the implication. Okay? So what happens? Bishlosha Mekomot, says Rabbi Yochanan and name Rabbi Shmuel, Halacha Okevet Mikra. There are 3 locations, he claims, where the Halacha LaMoshe Misinai, I'm going to translate Okevet here, could be a few different ways, puts a different spin, okay, or changes the essence of what the pasuk actually says. Okay? HaTorah Amra, and now he's going to cite these 3 examples. Number 1, HaTorah Amra Ba'afar, where it talks about Kisui Hadam, covering the blood, okay, in the slaughter of an animal, that we must put earth on it, okay? But what happens? B'halacha, and the halacha l'Moshe Misinai, bakol, that you can use other kinds of things as well. I mentioned in yesterday's shiur that sawdust was very common today okay, but you could use, besides earth, you could use other kinds of plant-based materials as well.
And ashes.
Well, it could be. We'll see. We don't have a firm statement on that yet. Okay. Second example. Okay. All right. The Bert HaTorah. Right. B'chol davar. HaTorah Amra in the second case, Bitar, regarding the status of the Nazir, what instrument he must use to shave. Right.
What he can't use.
Oh, I'm sorry. What he cannot use. Right. Tar lo ya'aleh al rosho. Okay, that he can't, you're right? V'halacha bakol davar. But halacha l'Moshe Misinai, any kind of utensil that would, a razor, okay? Any kind of utensil that has a sharp enough edge We saw the example, remember, of a carpenter's plane as one example. Okay, all right.
But imagine that.
Okay. Third example. All right. Okay. HaTorah Amra Sefer. Here we're talking about a get. The Torah says Sefer Kritut. Okay. That would seem to imply a book of separation. V'alech Moshe Misinai b'chol davar, in any kind of text. So you can write it not simply on a piece of parchment, you could even write it on something else. Okay, the get, right? Ve'im ita l'cheshuv, and if you're going to count these three as if to say that Rabbi Yishmael gave a total list,
It was also kosher for a soda.
right?
Instead of
Okay.
the alpha.
All right, could be. Okay, Nami, hi, there's others. Okay, what happens? Tana v'shier. He taught us, but he omitted some. Okay, Umay shier, asks the Gemara, the high shier. You click, what if we're saying that it's possible he omitted, what other example could you have given of an omission? Okay, are we talking about the example of our sota here? Or are we talking about another case? Says the Gemara, Shi'er Mitzorah. He omitted an example of Mitzorah, where perhaps there too, Halach Moshe Misinai. I hate to use the word uproot because we're going to get that in a moment, but in a sense, uproots, changes the pasuk. Okay, the Tanya, as taught elsewhere in a Braita. V'haya bayom hashvi'i yigaleich et kol sa'aro. We have the pasuk that says that on the seventh day, okay, he shaves, right? All the hair is shaved. Klal, that's a general principle. Further, the pasuk says, et rosho v'et zikano v'et gabot einav. His head and his beard and his eyebrows. Prat, that's a detail. Next part of the pasuk, ved kol sa'aro yigaleh, and all his hair he shall remove, he shall shave. Chazar uklal, it comes back and then gives a general principle. In other words, what do we have here? Is the rabbinic example of klal uprat uklal, a generalization, then a specific detail, and then another generalization. And what do, says the Gemara, when we have klal uprat uklal? Look in the Gemara, right? It's going to tell us, I atadam ele ke'ein haprat. You determine that the law is such that it is what is, I'm going to use the word, approximately closest to the detail. Okay? And what is the detail in this case? Ma prat mefurash, since the detail is explicit and spelled out, namely, makom kinus se'ar v'nir'eh, a place where hair is gathered and is visible. Okay, afkom makom kinus se'ar v'nir'eh. So therefore, based on this rabbinic drash of klal uprat uklal, any other locations on the body where hair is gathered and is visible, that's what has to be shaved. Okay, so that would seem to be a drash that would tell us, the Gemara is asking, that here's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai that Rabbi Yishmael did not include. Ma Rabbi, what did it include? Rabbi Se'ar haraglayim, a euphemistic, according to Art Scroll and Rashi, euphemistic for male hair in the genital area. Okay? My mi'et, what did it omit? Mi'et, the beit hashechi udekule gufe. It omitted the hair and the armpits, even though that is gathered, it is not generally visible, and generally hair on other parts of the body. The hilchata, but the law is, right, migaleich kidalaat, that they shave him as smooth as a gourd. Okay, Ditnan. Why? Because a Mishnah tells us, uba lo lahakif et hamitzora. Okay, so what happens here? He comes to remove the hair for the mitzora. Ma'avir ta'ar al kol b'saro. That he must pass the razor on his entire flesh. Ukatani sefer. And then it's taught at the end. Uviyom hashvi'i megalcho. On the seventh day, he is shaved. Tiglachet shniya ketiglachet rishona. And the second set of shaving for the mitzora is similar to the earlier first shaving of the mitzora. Okay, so in other words, he is shaved twice, once initially, okay, and then after his 7 days, okay, he is given another shave, right? Now, what happens? Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, he says, Ki kach hashiv halacha, okay, because when you consider or count this halacha, okevet mikra, you say that this reshapes, okay, or uproots in some way the pasuk. Ha okevet midrabananhi. No, it really reshapes and reforms the rabbinic statement, because this was derived based on the klal uprat uklal, which is a rabbinic means of interpreting a pasuk. It doesn't mean that we have a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that actually changes the language of the pasuk, or I don't want to use the word distort, but reshapes the practice as found in the pasuk. Okay?
Article is much stronger. We use the word undermine.
Undermines, right. Mhm. By the way, that's why it uses the word okevet. Okay, I think that's why Archon wants wants to use it that way. Rav Papa Amar. What does Rav Papa say? Kikach hashiv halacha okevet ve'okeret. Notice how strong Rav Papa says. In that case, we have to count it that the halacha l'Moshe Sinai not only undermines but uproots. Okay? Ha okevet. No, Sister Gemara. Ha okevet umosefet. No, it undermines it, but it adds something to it. Why? Rav Ashi Amar. Therefore, Rav Ashi is going to come with a different explanation. Ha matnita. Okay? But here we have our Mishnah. Mani, according to whom is it? Rabbi Yishmael. It's according to Rabbi Yishmael, who we cited as the original source for the klal upratu klal. And what did he do? Didarish klale uprate. And he interprets this, okay? And his whole statement was based on a rabbinic explanation, a rabbinic means of interpretation of klal uprat uklal. Okay, but we saw the halacha is kedalat, that it was shave him as smooth as a gourd. And what was that based on? Kedalat, mani. According to whom was that halacha based on? Rabbi Akiva. That was based on a drash method of Rabbi Akiva, which the Gemara tells us, the darish ribui umiute, that he used a different means of drasha, namely ribui umiut. Okay, generalization and then specification. And now the Gemara is going to explain it elsewhere in another bright, a pasuk. V'haya b'yom hashvi'i yigalech et kol se'aro. Again, the pasuk says on the seventh day he shall have all his hair shaved. Riba, that's the generalization. Then next part of the pasuk, et rosho v'et zekano v'et gabot einav, his head and his beard and his eyebrows. Remember, it's the same pasuk that they're darshaning. They're just darshaning it in a different method. Okay, Mi-8, he gives a specification. Next part of the pasuk. Ve'et kol sa'aro yigalech. Okay? And all his hair will be shaved. Chazar v'riba. He went back and then made a generalization. Riba umi-8 v'riba. Okay, a generalization, specification, and generalization. What do we get? Our final point, riba hakol. It includes then all, everything. My riba, what did it include? Riba de kule gufe. It included his entire body. Umay mi-8. And what did it eliminate? What did it limit? Mi-8 se'ar shebatoch hachotem. It limited the hair that was inside his nose. Okay, so you can see from the different methods of drasha, you get very different interpretations, and you would actually get different halacha. Okay,
And you can assume that that's hair only inside the body?
inside the
I
right.
mean, what about hair in the ears?
That would here inside the ears would be the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, in that case, I think that's what Rabbi Akiva, that's the implication. Okay, but I want to, and by the way, remember in the morning when we say Rabbi Yishmael, we only list his method of drasha that was from the Sifra. Okay, there are through Agadata, we've got other methods too. Anyway, let's go on. My hava Allah.
Rabbi Yishmael included the hair in the nose? Or he didn't?
No, he wouldn't. Okay, so what happens? So ultimately, so in other words, the Gemara wants to point out to us there that that was the challenge to Rabbi Yishmael's whole question of saying that there were three examples and then trying to show us, okay, and the Gemara questioning, aren't there more than three examples where the halacha changes, halacha l'Moshe Sinai changes the pasuk? And then it gets into that discussion.
What other methods are there? The Rabbi Yishmael's method and the three point me too.
That's right. Oh, there are a lot.
Lots of them.
There are a lot. If I remember correctly, but this was from many years ago, for the Agadata, to drash with Agadata, there were 32 statements.
Wow.
Okay. Someplace it is written. I don't remember immediately where, but there, and I don't think Art Scroll cites it, okay, in any of the notes. And I didn't have a chance to look whether Koren cites it in the notes.
These two methods mostly used in mostly.
But that's used for halakha, right?
Yeah.
Right, okay. But here, this gives us a very clear example of the difference between klal upratu klal and ribui and mi'ut and ribui, right? Okay, let's go on. My havala. So the Gemara comes back. So what's going on here? What's the final statement? What's the status? Tashma, says a bright. Here we'll try to give an answer. The Amar Rav Huna bar Ashi, he says, Amar Rav in the name of Rav, Ein Sham Afar, if there is no earth there, Mevi Rak Vuvit Yerek Umikadesh. He brings the dust of decayed vegetables. That's how Art Scroll wanted to translate it. Okay, and he sanctifies. Okay, so what happens? Velohi. All right. So what happens? But that's not the case. No, says the Gemara. Rak vuvit yerek hu dahave afar. We could claim maybe that the dust of decayed vegetables is still a form of earth. Afer, but ash, here it comes back, Bob, right? Comes back to our question. Lo have afar, but ash is not considered earth. So according up to this point, it would be clear that ash could not be used to be into the sota one.
You had said earlier that it had to be something plant-based. Ashes from burning, it's not from the plant. So maybe that's.
That could be. Okay, now we come back to our Mishnah. Okay, we said that this earth back in our original Mishnah had to be such that it was added on top of the water, right? That was in the vial. Okay. And that the Gemara had told us that there were three things that had to be visible. Okay. And that was one of them. Okay. So let's go on here as we find out. Tanu Rabbanan. We learn now in a following Braita, Shlosha Tzrichin Sheyira'u. There are three things we're taught that need to be seen. Okay, oh, thank you. Okay. All right. What are the three things? Number one, Afar Sota, the earth that's regarding the Sota situation. Number two, Ve'efer Para, the ash of the Para Aduma. Okay. Remember, that's going to be sprinkled on somebody to make them tahor. And the third, Verok Yevama, the spittle of a Yevama, that when the brother-in-law refuses to do Yibum and instead prefers Chalitza, okay, she performs as part of the Chalitza, she spits, and that spittle has to be visible. Okay.
She doesn't spit on him, spits on the corner.
Spits on his shoe, on his whatever, but it has to be visible.
Did you say not on him?
Not directly on.
Not directly.
What? Okay, so what happens? Mishum Rabbi Yishmael Amru. And they said in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, here's another example. He claims, Afdam Tzipur. So the blood of the bird regarding the mitzorah. That, in other words, that also he claims has to be visible. Remember, as part of the purification, they take two birds, they slaughter one. The blood of that bird is supposed to drop onto water, spring water, that's in a container to be used along with the hyssop and the wool and the cedar wood to spritz the mitzorah as part of his purification. Okay, so what happens? My Talmud, the Rabbi Yishmael. What's the reasoning that Rabbi Yishmael adds this other example? Dichtiv, because it's written to vitaval otam bedam hatzipur v'gomer, because it says you dip those three other items into the blood of the bird, vitanya, and then the Braita tells us badam. It says into the blood. Yachol badam v'lo b'mayim. Maybe it means we dip it simply into the blood and not into the water. Talmud lomar b'mayim. But the text says into water. Imayim, if there's water, okay, as well as blood, then I might think Yachol b'mayim v'lo b'dam, that maybe I put it into the water and not into the blood. Talmud lomar, again, my text says badam, into the blood. Ha ketzad, how then is it to be done? Okay, mevi mayim shedam tzipur nikar bahen. So this is Rabbi Yishmael's argument that they bring water where the blood is of the bird is visible on floating on top of that water. Vikama, and how much should it be? Revis, it should be the measurement of a revis. V'Rabbanan, however, regarding the rabbis, hahulagufe dahachi kama. The pasuk is there not to tell us that issue about the whether it's dipping into blood or into water or things like that, but it comes for its main purpose to tell us what the procedure is in general. Okay, what the mitzvah is for the purification, right? So what happens? The Gemara goes on. Rachamana, right? The Hachika Amar Rachamana, Atvil Badam Uva Mayim. They argue that it means dipping it into a mixture of blood and water. The Rabbi Yishmael, he's still arguing his perspective. Im Cain, if that's the case, if you're going to argue with me that it's a mixture, lichtov rachmana v'taval bahem. Let the Torah have said it that he dips it in them. Badam ubamaya, blood into blood and water. Lamali, why then do you argue with me that it's blood and water combined? It must therefore be linikar. The pasuk must be telling us then that it's to be able to recognize the blood floating on the water. V'Rabbanan, and the rabbis continue to argue their perspective. Ikatav Rachmana v'taval bahem. Had it been written in the Torah that you dipped it into them, Hava Amina, it's possible I might say, Hai lechude v'hai lechude. I dip this one separate and I dip this one separate. Katav Rachmana badam ubamayim le'arvan. And that's why the Torah says into blood and into water to mix them. The Rabbi Yishmael continues his perspective. La'avan kra'ach rina kativ. To mix them, he says, that's a different pasuk. Namely, the pasuk says, "V'shachat et hatzipor he'echad v'gomer," that you slaughter the one bird. V'Rabbanan, and the rabbis, imihahu, if you're going to claim, Rabbi Yishmael, that it's based on that pasuk, hava amina, I would have said, l'shichtei samuch lamana, to slaughter the animal in close proximity to the utensil, venin katinhu leveridin, and then pinch the veridin, the vessels of the neck of the bird, so that the blood doesn't come out at that point. Ulekable ledam b'mana achrina, and to receive the blood in a different container, in a different utensil. Kamash Malan comes to teach us that that's not the case, and that therefore that's why the rabbis hold that the blood and the water are mixed, and it's not a question of that being another example of some other than, in addition to the three items that we saw earlier in the Amud that had to be recognized, had to be visible. Okay, everybody with me? By mine Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Zera. So now Rabbi Yirmiyah asks a question of his teacher, Rabbi Zera. Okay, we're saying we've got this bird and we're slaughtering this bird. What happens if it's a extremely large bird? Or what happens if it's a very small bird? Is what he's going to say. Gidola, okay, if the bird is very large, umadechet et hamayim, and the blood of the bird, all right, overcompasses the amount of water. Katana, let's say it's a very small bird. V'nidchet mipnei hamayim, and it's barely visible there, that amount of blood in the water. Mahu, what's the status? Amarle, he says to them, he responds back, Rabbi Zera, Lav amina lach. In other words, he says to him, what are you asking me klatz kashas for? Okay? In other words, why haven't I told you? Lo tapik nafshecha lebar mihilchata. Don't deal, okay, don't raise issues that are beyond the clear perspective or the clear boundaries of the halacha. But see, poor drawer, shiaru rabbanan. The rabbis measured this amount of blood based on a particular kind of bird, a tzipor drawer. Okay, there are a few different explanations of tzipor drawer, but I'm going to go with the combination of Art Scroll and Koren, which was a bird that was fairly free to be kept in a home. Okay, some want to say it was like a larger than a hummingbird. Okay, more like the size of a swallow. Okay, something like that.
Rabbi Green, when they said a revis before, did it mean exactly a revis or
Yeah.
at least a revis?
No, it's generally, we're going to see it's exactly specific. We'll get to that shortly. Okay, right? But see, poor draw shiru, the rabbis measured it based on this bird that was free flying. In other words, it was allowed to exist in a home. Ein lecha gedola shemadechet et hamayim. That size bird, it's not larger that its blood should overcome the water. Ve'ein lecha ktana shenidchet mipnei hamayim. And that size bird is not smaller that its blood would not be visible, being mixed in the water. Tanu Rabbanan, and now we get to a new piece. All right, what happens? We come back, Labriel. So we come back, remember we talked about what goes into the vial first, the water or the earth. We suggested from the language of the Mishnah that the water goes in first, right? Hikdim afar lamayim. What happens if he put the earth right first into the vial? Pasul, says this writer. It's not viable. Rabbi Shimon machshir, but Rabbi Shimon says it's acceptable. My time of the Rabbi Shimon. What's the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon? Tichtiv, because it's written in the pasuk, v'lakchu l'tamei me'afar sreifat hachatat. Okay, that they took it, okay, for the purpose of purifying the one who is tamei from the earth that was burnt of the chatas. Okay, we're talking about what? Para aduma, and we're going to make a parallel between para aduma and the sota. Okay, Vitanya, and we learn a brayta. Amar Rabbi Shimon, v'chi afarhu. Are we talking about that? Okay, and you claim that that is earth. V'halo eferhu. But hold on, that is ashes, right? Shinaha. So his answer is going to be Shinaha katuv b'mashma'o, that the text actually in that pasuk changed its meaning. Ladun himenu gzera shava, for the purpose of enabling us to do another kind of drasha. Okay, gzera shava. Remember, Gzera Shava is always based on a common word, common term. Ne'emar kan afar. It says here, earth. V'ne'emar lahalan afar. And it says there, earth. Where does it say earth? Regarding the sota, right? Ma lahalan afar al gabe mayim. The same way there, we're talking about earth on top of the water. Afkan afar al gabe mayim. So likewise here, we have earth on top of the water. Umakan ikdim afar lamayim. And the same way here, okay, one can put the earth in advance of the water, okay? Kasher, it would be valid. Af lahalan. So therefore there, ikdim afar lamayim kasher. So therefore there, if one puts the earth in advance of the water, it would be acceptable. Now, what happens? V'hatam minala, and there we're going to ask, what's your source? What's your Torah source? Trei kra'ei k'tivei. There are two psukim. Ketiv says one pasuk, alav, on it. Alma, and therefore, Efer Bereisha, that the ash would come first for the sprinkling, all right, for to become tahor. With paraduma, ukativ mayim chayim al keli, and there it's written that it's got to be spring water into the utensil. Alma, therefore, mayim bereisha. That would seem to tell us that the water is to come first. HaKetzad, what then is the solution to what would appear to be a possible contradiction of the psukim? Namely, Ratzah zeh noten, Ratzah zeh noten. If this one wants, he can put this first. If this one wants, he can put that one first. The Rabbanan, whereas the rabbis say what? El Kli or El Kelly Dafka. No, because it says into the utensil, Dafka, it's precise. That is the order that it must be. Okay, implying the water goes in first. Alav, on it, let arvan, in order to mix. And then you mix the earth into that liquid.
You could do it either way.
What? No. So the end result is the rabbi saying, no, you can't do it either way. Okay? Ve'ema, and I might argue, I might say, I love dafka. Maybe that's the one, that's precise order, that you have to put it on it first, the earth first, and put the water on that. El Kelly, in terms of the utensil, shetehe chayutan bikli, that that has to go directly from the spring directly into the utensil. Ma matzinu b'chol makom machshir lamala. So what don't we normally find, says the Gemara, as an answer, that which permits okay. All right.